2 weeks ago, we did a Deep Space Nine episode from Season 2, which was fairly disappointing. Now we're going to go back even further. Move Along Home was the 8th regular episode and an achievement, the first official meeting with an alien civilization from the other side of the wormhole, hence Sisko's appearance in the dress uniform here. You may be saying, hey, First Contact, that's some real mainstream Star Trek stuff right there. Good job! DS9 was usually at its best when it wasn't like the other series, and Move Along Home takes that premise and goes a step further with it. The plot for this episode is... it's one of the absurdities that you might expect from Season 1 TNG. That was actually based on an animated series episode, which was done there because it was considered too idiotic for the original series. Yes, Move Along Home puts DS9 at the end of a big damn human centipede. But while the moment for the big meeting is rapidly approaching, Sisko learns that his son has been going down to the docking ring to ogle the arriving girls, because it's hard to get away with looking at internet porn when you're on a first-name basis with everyone who runs the computers. But Sisko is disturbed that Jake's been getting advice on girls from Nog. Admittedly, the fact that on first meeting Nog he was caught in the act of robbery is enough to concern any father, so this friendship naturally annoys him. And the idea of Nog advising Jake on women visibly conjures up images in Sisko's head of proper autoerotic asphyxiation techniques or something. But before he can start talking about girls, the aliens arrive, the Wadi. Alas, not before a gag about Bashir not having his dress uniform. And obviously he can't just replicate a new one, because if you put trivial things in the computer like the things necessary to meet heads of state without offending them, well, you wouldn't have room for Klingon love poetry, would you? And it's a matter of priorities. The Wadi have likewise dressed up for this special occasion, sporting a look that's kind of a kimono by way of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. But they're not really all that concerned about the formalities. They want to play games. In fact, they name-drop Quarks Place in the hopes of finding some games there. But Quarks Place isn't an arcade, it's a casino, basically, so they're going to need money to gamble. So they offer things like special sticks, which Quark brushes off without learning the first thing about what would make them so special that the Wadi would think that they could be using them as gambling stakes.
Highly sought in our culture, they have many different uses.
Was that in your butt? It was in your butt, wasn't it? Quark also rejects some juice that tastes like the stuff that leaks out of a cadaver's ass, but finally he shows what Quark really needs: shiny rocks. Unfortunately, the Wadi, like 99% of Star Trek, are a planet of hats, and since their hat is games, well, they're kicking his ass at this. But Quark has an ace up his sleeve, by which I mean Quark plans to cheat. But first, Sisko has to lay into Jake because he's up late doing homework, and that's certainly not something you would want to encourage as a parent. But back to Quarks, and the Wadi are no fools, so they quickly see how they're being cheated. So they turn intimidating all of a sudden on Quark, which, well, admittedly that's easy to do when you're up against a Ferengi. But they decide to unleash an even worse fate on him. They're going to have him gamble on a game, all inside this disappearing box that turns the Dabo table into this whatever the hell it is. The game is called Chula. It was originally called the Chula Saga, but of course they were sued by the Candy Crush Saga people and had to change it. Quark doesn't know the rules to this game, but he will be taught them as he goes along. The oldest trick in the book, but Quark does love his shiny rock, so he agrees to play the game. But next thing we see is Sisko going from sleeping in bed to fully dressed and on some alien floor. Well, which has been known to happen if you drink a Benjamin Button special. You sleep drunk and then awaken in some dingy bar the night before, looking at an extremely ugly person that you will have to sleep with in order to avoid a causality loop. In this case, Sisko figures he's been kidnapped, and when his comm badge fails and saying end program doesn't do anything, well, that's exhausted all of the easy answers. Well, there's always the old standby, tricorders. If all else fails, you can particle your way out of the problem. Sisko finally, and a fine example of this episode's bizarre association of playing games with mindless tedium, arrives at something beyond blank walls, which is the Wadi leader laughing and telling him, "Move along home," over and over. Yeah, that's what we have to break up the monotony. Pointless babbling of phantoms. It's like whoever put this together was spitting on the very existence of fun. So for Move Along Home, how are you picturing the games?
Games are lies. They teach children that there is the way home.
But there is no land of candy like there is no love. There is only the hollow attempt to divert one from the crushing weight of our own mortality and certainty of eternal oblivion. Bashir takes a moment to remind us how far his character would come by showing how annoying he was in the beginning.
Doctor!
Where would we be without the biggest pussy in Starfleet? He claims he thought this was a nightmare and was trying to wake himself up, but it's not. I know, I was trying the exact same thing while watching this episode. He's relieved now that Sisko's here, of course, because this isn't a nightmare, because obviously there's no way that dreams would ever include people that you know. They're quickly joined by Kira and Dax, and at the moment their only guess is that this is some kind of behavioral test, because deducing that people who spent 6 frickin' hours straight playing Dabo and couldn't shut up about games might just have drafted them into a game. Oh, that's more than can be expected from the Yahoos this episode, as you're going to see over the course of this alleged game. Well, it seems this game is still going on the next morning because Jake visits Odo since his dad's missing, and he's not going to school because the O'Briens are on Earth celebrating Keiko's mom's 100th birthday, the closest to this episode's connection to this week's Big in Japan theme, because that means that Keiko's mom gave birth to her while in her 60s. What do you plan to do with your retirement? Oh, I think I'll have a baby. Not getting any younger. Plus, I needs me some of that man candy. Yum, yum. So Odo confirms Sisko disappeared without a hint of where he could have gone. So he heads to Ops to meet with Lieutenant Primin. Remember him? No? Well, don't feel bad if you don't, because aside of this glorified cameo, his only other appearance was in The Passenger. He had the job that Michael Eddington would later handle. Station security, I mean, not being Sisko's nemesis. This episode might explain his short tenure, because when none of the staff show up on time, he says to himself, "Oh, I heard that Wadi party lasted all night. They must be sleeping it off. I'll just assume that rather than verifying that they're all right. It's not as if I'm Federation head of security here or anything." Between him and Odo, I think we can average out to one person with a rational level of security. But back to the, I'm going to call it game since it involves dice and pieces, even though it is devoid of anything like joy or fun. Thanks to Quark's rule, they will meet with the Chandra.
I don't understand.
But there's the key. Some will never understand, while others will consider it mere child's play.
A cryptic remark that no one here will get because child's play refers to the challenge our heroes will soon face. First, though, more walking up identical corridors in total tedious silence. To show we are on the journey to the grave with naught but meaningless barriers around us offering only silent judgment. Death is the only game and we will all lose in the end. But they finally find something, thank God for something. A room with a girl playing a rhyming hopscotch sort of game. The whole mere child's play, get it? There's an invisible barrier that they can't pass, but the girl is moving through it.
She steps on certain panels, which must allow her to go through the field.
If you can see, you'll come with me.
Dax has the important job this episode of pointing out the clues or stating the frickin' obvious. So Bashir tries hopping on the same spots as the girl, only gets smacked in the face by space. Alas, the only way across the room is to surrender your dignity and say the rhyme and do the gestures along with the steps. And with that success, Quark gets a handful of shiny rocks.
I think I'm getting the hang of this.
What are you talking about? You didn't do a thing but roll the dice. You could literally be replaced by a monkey and it wouldn't make a difference. One of the writers said that the point was for the audience not to know the rules of the game either. But what we see shows it doesn't matter anyway. They show up in a room where the only choices are stand there until you starve to death or play rhyming hopscotch. And they do the rhyming hopscotch. Wow, what a clever obstacle for them to have to overcome. Quark finally has something to do besides roll the dice. He has to choose whether they take the short or the long path. The short path puts the players at greater risk, but it doubles the winnings if they succeed. But if you lose all your players, you lose everything and have to listen to that sad noise tuba sound. Whoom, 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 whoom. But Odo stops by at that moment asking about the 4 missing senior officers, and that's when he and Quark realize the connection between their disappearance and 4 players in this Wadi game. And they're genre savvy enough to know that such games are played to the death. Meanwhile, the characters have finally deduced that they're playing a game. I am trying not to do nothing but show sarcasm here, but the need for them to mull over and then blurt out the bloody obvious over and over again is just so infuriating. It's like this is suddenly Star Trek Derp Space Nine.
Home is often the destination in a game.
Waddy do love games.
Think of it. We've been given directions, clues, obstacles to overcome.
Another puzzle now awaits. They enter a room where there's a party and everyone is drinking fruit juice and laughing. So Kira decides there's only one thing to do now. Cause a scene. This accomplishes absolutely nothing, but soon the room begins filling with noxious gas. And while that buffet table could be to blame, I'm guessing this is the next puzzle. The leader of the Wadi shows up, laughing and offering them drinks as they stand there gasping and choking. Everybody else is fine, though. And they offer our heroes drinks until Bashir drinks one and discovers it's the cure for the gas, so they all drink. Yeah, I know, more sarcasm, but what a brilliant solution! Let me restate the puzzle for you. Not only is everybody with a drink fine, but on seeing you're gasping for air, they say, "Take a drink." And the answer is, take a drink. Okay, that is not a puzzle. That is a playtime dreamed up by a 5-year-old child who thinks he's playing the Riddler. I would like to step into Bizarro World to do a comparison that I never thought I'd make. This surreal game world they're trapped in is no doubt reminiscent of Voyager's The Cloud. And between DS9 and Voyager on that score, it's Voyager that's engaging, clever, sharp, intriguing in its surreal nature, funny, macabre, and all around an excellent outing. While DS9 is utter shit. Yeah, I know. No one was more surprised than I was. Odo joins up with Primin to try to find the missing officers on the Wadi ship, but all they have is a bizarre energy pattern, kind of like a transporter. Odo plans to beam over there and check it out, but Primin points out that he can't just board another vessel without permission. But Odo says, "Oh, I'm not in Starfleet, so I can do whatever the hell I want." Then when Primin won't beam him over,
"Is it against Starfleet policy to press a few buttons?"
You know just pushing a button is what makes a phaser work, don't you, Odo? It's not pushing the button, it's what you're doing. And as a cop, you of all people should know what it means to be an accessory. Now, the Wadi are in fact guilty of kidnapping. But there's no actual evidence that they've taken the missing officers. 4 officers missing and 4 pieces on a game board is not the most ironclad connection. I mean, what if they were playing Monopoly and said, "Be careful with that thimble. I'm sure Major Kira is the thimble." Oh, and she's in jail now. Use that get out of free card right this instant. So Odo finds the room with the energy signatures, leaps inside, and finds himself inside Quarks. Well, that's all the proof we need. So he demands that the game end. But the Wadi say if they do that, the players will be lost. So they're going to have to keep playing this till the end. Unfortunately, Quark rolls a critical failure, so inside the game, tricorders start dinging until flashing lights show up, and they whisk Bashir away. Terry Farrell was unhappy about that because, thanks to Move Along Home, she wasn't able to appear on TNG's Birthright like she was supposed to, so Siddig got to do it, since he was now out of the action thanks to this. Odo tries to reverse this action, but the Wadi continue the game, and Quark decides the best move is to take the riskier path, because it will advance them all the way home with just one roll instead of risking another bad roll.
Diallo.
What? What does it mean?
Sacrifice one so that 2 may live.
As you can see, that was a shitty plan. So Quark must now choose one to be sacrificed, but in about the only good moment this episode, Quark's allowed to show the sense of decency that he has despite his roguish exterior. The idea of having to pick someone to be lost crushes him. And keep in mind that the reason for this strategy was that they would get home with just one move. He gets all those riches just by picking one piece to be lost. And that's the furthest thing from his mind at the moment. Instead, he gets down on his knees and literally begs them not to make him do this. The pitiful display convinces the Wadi to spare Quark that decision, and just programs the game to select a player at random. In the game, this is represented by the voice of Bashir calling to lead them to the way out, but it's a trick and Dax hurts her leg. and I guess the Wadi presumed the Cisco would just put her down for that. The actual challenge arrives now in the form of an earthquake. They have to get to the other side in order to complete the ground and finish the game. But because they're thinking beings and not game pieces, they refuse to leave Dax behind, even though she obviously can't make it. The whole sacrifice one so two may live thing. And I would like to congratulate them on this scene. I didn't think it'd be possible to make a daring escape through a collapsing cave boring, but boy, did I underestimate them. Eventually, boredom gives way to melodrama about leaving Dax behind and not following orders and all that stuff, until it's back to the boredom again. And stick with what you know. Finally, Kira falls over the edge, which is good because it means that something's finally happening. Eventually, all three tumble over the edge, and then all the senior staff materialize in Quarks, but they haven't actually won.
I'm afraid all your players were lost.
What? You mean we were never in any real danger?
It's only a game.
One of the writers, the same one I mentioned before, said this was not planned and a horrible mistake, which convinces me that he was probably responsible for the sorry collection of puzzles we got. Because this is the only actual twist the entire episode. The seeming playing for your life is just a simulation like games should be. It's not deadly at all. Which, logically, it should be. There's no need to make a game require mortal peril. That's ridiculously sadistic. It's the only thing that works because the episode is so absurd that it yanked the rug out from under us by finally being sensible. Post-episode follow-up, annoying character's a tough call, but I'm going to give it to Bashir, who is slightly more intolerable than the rest. Final score for Move Along Home is 1 out of 10. The characters must play a game for their lives is so overdone it's practically cliche as it is. But what's worse is there's absolutely nothing clever about any of this, save the twist that they're really not in danger. The puzzles barely qualify as such, there's far too much wandering about doing nothing, and scenes of peril are filmed in such a way as to be devoid of any tension whatsoever. And I can't believe some of the performances we got this episode. While Quark's groveling was likely meant to be sincere, if a bit over the top, everybody else seems to be doing a caricature of their own character this week. The episode fails to engage on any level. It is ultimately an ill-advised holodeck gone amok episode, just in a different package. The question to be asked is, what are the point of the puzzles? What do they add to the story? Only that a game requires challenges to overcome, but that only means the puzzles need to exist. So what more can you bring to that? The obvious is to make it something clever, something that requires the crew to show their ingenuity or ability to think laterally under pressure, and something that would prove a satisfying solution to each, just like people love a good mystery with a satisfying answer, over a mystery with a contrived answer. Another option would be to make the puzzles less cerebral and more emotional. Each one is tailored as an obstacle to one of the players because of their personalities and history and weaknesses. As I said, this was the 8th episode, and any opportunity to flesh out the cast is good. Now, obviously, Cisco would be a poor choice for that, since Emissary covered that ground thoroughly with him. But then there's no law that says it had to be Cisco in there and not O'Brien or Odo. The point is, you can't just say, it's a game, so puzzles must be in it. They have to have meaning. Just like saying, it's a show, there must be scenes in it, doesn't mean you can just throw any old crap on the screen to fill time. Although the episode seems to have trouble with that point too. A puzzle needs to either provide us with some new insight, or it should be an entertaining diversion in its own right. Otherwise, it's just a waste of air. Now, I wonder what the Dominion thought of the Wadi being nearby. Their game seemed to promote a disorder that the Dominion wouldn't be able to tolerate. But speaking of evil overlords, next time we return to Voyager for Bride of Chaotica, the answer to the question you were no doubt asking, can Janeway out-evil a cartoonish villain? Well, so long as no rhyming hopscotch is involved, I'm going to say yes.
All hail your lord, all hail
not what you said when you were groveling on the floor.
Oh, that's right. You were here for the groveling.